Good afternoon. It's Tuesday, and my name is BJ. Back on your screen for another edition of Let's Talk. Today, we're going to do an in depth dive of my trip to Germany back in June of 2014. It was a work trip, a business trip. So, let me give you a little backstory on how that worked. It was mid to early 2014. The employer that I worked for acquired a German company, which was in the similar field as ours. And when they merged the two companies, there were some issues between the ways that Germans do work and Americans do work. There were also some cultural differences in cultural practices, right? So the big bosses got together and decided that we should have a cultural exchange program or employee exchange program, much like you have in colleges and universities, where they have a foreign exchange student program. So the request or the ask from the big bosses was for us to, those who were interested, to write an essay, and then from those essays, they would select a handful of employees from both the German offices and the US offices and send them across the ocean to spend 1 month at the other office. During that time, they would work, and they would also have time to socialize and understand the local culture, understand the business traditions, and understand the mores and values of the other culture. So I wrote my essay, and my essay was chosen. And I was, I believe, the second person from the US office that was selected to go over to the German office and spend a month. So in the second week of June 2014, I took off for Germany, and I landed in, I think it was Munich, which is the big city. And then I took the train from there to a little town called Estenfeld. And I stayed between Estenfeld and Würzburg. I worked in, let me get it right now. I worked in Estenfeld, and I was staying in Würzburg. So, Würzburg is a gorgeous, picturesque town in central Germany. So, if Germany was a donut, right, and you had the donut hole right in the middle, Würzburg will be right in the center of Germany. And it's in the district, I think they call it the Rhine district or the Rhine region. So historically, people in that region even had a different language than what is modern German today. And they're very proud of the region where they live, very proud of where they come from, and rightfully so. It's absolutely gorgeous there. Lots of historic buildings, lots of buildings that have been rebuilt because of World War II. And then there's some sad history in the area too. There were plaques on the ground in front of certain homes that showed where Jewish people who had been dragged out of their homes forcefully and taken to concentration camps, and most of whom ended up later being gassed or killed. It showed, those plaques showed the last places where those people were alive, and it made it very real, the experience of the Holocaust in Europe. And so then there were also beautiful things that happened there. There were beautiful old castles, and there was a river that curved through town, and there were mountains, and they had a beautiful modern trolley system, and they had very old cathedrals and uh, lots of pubs and bars. And I remember there was one bar that had over, I believe, 100 kinds of beer and lager. Right? I'm not a huge beer drinker, but one of my things is when I'm in a new country, I always have to try a beer or two or three because it's a tradition I've started. Well, this place you go in and they've got like taps on unlimited, and they've got a wall with different labels and that you can choose from. And I tried maybe three different types of beer. Pretty good, pretty good. I like the lighter color beers I've found over the years, the ambers and the paler color beers. The dark browns and the heavy lagers are not my favorites. They're a little bitter for me personally. But in this town, in Würzburg and the surrounding town of Estenfeld, you could see fields where they grew the hops. They also grew wine grapes there. If I remember correctly, there was a nunnery there who owned the vineyard and had owned this vineyard for possibly hundreds of years. And They grew the grapes and packaged them in the wine and sold it locally and throughout Europe. So it was summertime there. It was a little bit chilly, but I had a great time. Every weekend there was something exciting to do. And what I decided to do was take trips because Europe, as far as size wise, geographically, is fairly small. So what I decided to do is on weekends, I took trips to like places like London. I went to other places in Germany, like Berlin and Munich and other small towns and mid-sized cities. And I really got a feel for Germany. I got to ride the high-speed bullet trains, which I loved. I'm a huge transportation fanatic, public transportation fanatic. So if I get a chance to ride, like the modern trolley I told you about, they have beautiful, amazing. I also got to ride the ice train, they call it in Germany, their high speed train. I got to ride that back and forth from Würzburg down to Berlin. And I got to do a bus. Also, another weekend, I rode a bus across country in Germany. And that was cool because then you go through all these historic, picturesque little towns in the valleys and the mountains. And something I found interesting is in all these little towns, they had these churches and this dome where the church bell was, the church bell tower was. It had almost to me a Middle Eastern or Muslim shape, like a Turkish or Muslim inspired shape. Like it had a cone at the top and then it rounded at the bottom. And I found that very interesting to be in the heart of Europe. So yeah, that time in Germany was fantastic. The food was incredible, right? I didn't expect to like the bread so much in Germany. I was staying at a long stay or long term stay executive hotel, which included breakfast every morning. And they had freshly baked breads made from German grains, and they had all these different types of loaves and bread-based desserts and pastries. And back then I was a lot thinner, so I was enjoying myself every morning at breakfast. Something else I noticed is that in Germany, they do not allow certain food dyes that are allowed here in the United States. So I saw, for example, children's cereals, but they were all beige or brown, right? The natural colors of the grain. They weren't bleached. They weren't dyed red, yellow, green, blue, or purple like some of our children's cereals here in the States. They just don't allow certain things. And another interesting thing I learned while I was there is you're not allowed to work overtime in Germany. There's a law that's been passed where I believe the maximum any one person can work in a week is 37 hours. It's illegal for you to work more than that. And the way they get around that is they actually pay livable wages to everyone. So again, I was there in June 2014, and I went to the local McDonald's a few times. I know, shame on me. But when I went to the local McDonald's, they were hiring, and there was a sign on the counter that said, starting, and this is 2014, mind you, starting at 21 euros an hour to work at McDonald's in 2014. And the euro has always been a little bit more than the US dollar. And at that time, it was substantially more than the US dollar. So imagine that. And another thing I found out is all Germans can go to college or university basically free. One of my colleagues at the German office was going back for a second master's degree, essentially because he could and because it was almost free. It almost cost him nothing. So I had a great time in Germany. I hope to go back again one day. It was amazing. The people were nice. The food was good. They had some fun festivals on the weekends. And this town was one of those picturesque old European towns where it had the traditional sort of center of town with the big courtyard. And on Saturdays, all of the local vendors would come out. So farmers would bring their cheeses and their meats and their different products, fruit and produce, and people who made the wine. The nuns were there with their wine. Some of the local beer makers were there with the beers. It was amazing. So there was always something fun and exciting to do. Another weekend, they had a antique car show right outside of the castle that was in town. So at one point there had been what's called a prince bishop who ruled over that area. During World War II, the palace was burned down or destroyed, but they rebuilt the palace exactly with down to the furnishings, the paintings, the murals, etc. And then on weekends, they have different events outside in the courtyard and the gardens. So that was absolutely amazing. I enjoyed myself. I had a great time. We're at the 10.5 minute mark. I just wanted to give you guys a more in-depth discussion or talk about my trip to Germany. I hope you got something from it. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions about Germany or my time there, drop them in the comments. And if you like this, remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Join me for the journey. And remember, my motto is that self-care is critical and must be ongoing. Have a great day, and I'll be back on Thursday. Peace.